Thank you very much for the invitation. I feel proud to speak to you for two reasons. First of all, I'm sort of performing a line of ancestors that really served the Danish state and the Danish crown for many, many years on very high positions. And I'm sort of keeping up that line. And I think the last one that would have been able to speak here, but I'm not really sure about it, would have been Curator von Plessen, the first Oberpräsident of the Duchies of Schleswig and Holstein in 1864. So there is a very big historical line behind my mouth and my words. And I will take you also into visiting Nordic history around the Baltic Sea. And I'm afraid I have to treat you with some years that I cannot avoid to mention, historical years, because you have to get acquainted with the mental map of the Baltic Sea. And that's why I feel a bit alienated in this section, because I would rather have preferred to be in the previous one, as it dealt with national positions and identities. But nevertheless, I'm not to brand anything, especially not the focus of what I'm presenting to you. But I still can't find my images. I just need them. Anyway, I believe that it's on the Baltic Sea. Yes. I believe that the proximity of, I believe that the proximity of the profile of Nordic countries of neighborhood failed to work for soft diplomacy and rather produced hard power, extending in an ongoing theater of war. That is why I will take you on a trip to revisit the Mare Balticum exhibition that I did in 2002 in Copenhagen's National Museum. 1,000 years of myth, history, and art came alive across the Baltic Sea with Queen Margrethe II, who inaugurated this major cultural event for the Danish presidency of the EU in the Nationalmuseum. Initiated by the bridge across the Øresund, my concept paid tribute to naval fortresses as a means to focus on the history of 9 nation-states bordering the Baltic Sea, thus framing cultural bridges after the general device, since its topography had just become accessible again after the dissolution of the Soviet blocus. In a world dedicated to peace after the catastrophes of 2 world wars, we are confronted now with hybrid wars. But we need to reflect on the heritage of warfare, meaning the failure and the decline of cultural diplomacy. And I think you will really get aware of what I've formulated there when you see what I'm presenting to you. It is like a cut-through of our topography, of historical knowledge, mapping our prejudices and our identities. The outer ring of the show was dedicated to contemporary artists. Robert Rumors, that you see here from the Gdansk installation of a virtual boat shaped by neon lamps, sent the visitor to navigate between naval strongholds in topographical order started along fictive shores. In August 1989, the Baltic chain, formed by inhabitants over 1,000 kilometers from Tallinn to Vilnius, incarnated as a human fortification the physical erosion of the Iron Curtain. And we are now confronted with a new problematic that would have not been thinkable at that time, that is the hybrid war executed and put on the stage between Russia and the Ukraine. Mythological, ideological heritage petrified in naval fortresses, bastions of defense and attack, military rescue and strategic progress witness a vicious past shared by all Baltic nations. Pre-national monarchies used warfare with short-term shifting of powers, yet peace treaties also formed new alliances and shaped transnational cultural bonds between the Teutonic and the Livonian order, between the cities of the Hansa, between Denmark, Sweden, Prussia, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, yet extending theaters of war in 1854 from the Crimean to naval battles in Finnish waters. We will now visit the fortresses from west to east. We begin with the mythical island of Veneta, also called the mythic Atlantis of the North, presumably located between the German islands of Rügen and Usedom, and mentioned by the Roman Plinius, the Danish chronist Saxus, and the Arabian Ibrahim ibn Yaqub, praised as the blooming port city with 12 gates in a swampy area on the World Sea, with merchants coming from Greece, from the barbarian countries, meaning the extra-Roman German countries, and also non-Roman countries from Byzance and across the Mediterranean. Due to flooding, the mythic city declined by 1130. Until now, excavators tracked the puzzle of the remains of the biggest Slavic merchant town in the north and in Europe on the bottom of the Baltic, and they have never really found any evidence so far. Lübeck was founded before 1150 by merchants from Rhineland and Westphalia as the leading Hansa city since 1358, with the Kalmar Union of the Nordic kingdoms created by Margrethe I in 1397 and lasting for 150 years, the rise of the Russian Empire and the discovery of naval routes to India by 1500, Lübeck and the Hansa declined. Wismar has city rights mentioned already in 1230 and was part of the Hansa 40 years later, but it never gained the economic impact of Lübeck or Stralsund. Since 1648, under Swedish power, the city was attacked against its ally Brandenburg-Preußen and also by Denmark, and it remained under Swedish power until even 1803, when it was sold to Mecklenburg estates. The third Hansa city is Stralsund, that was granted Lübeck rights because of its rich herring grounds and traded with Riga and Novgorod. Due to the Hansa extended trade from Lübeck via Stralsund to Tallinn, some of the federated members of the Hansa prospered until the 17th century. And the Hansa network was one of the most important to really shape the consistency of the Baltic area. The archaeological site of Arkona on the cliffs of Rügen became the first Christian stronghold on the Baltic coast. Bishop Absalon, the founder of Copenhagen, replaced the pagan temple of a Slavic tribe by a wooden church until it was destroyed by Danish King Valdemar the Great in 1161. In 1401, King Eric of Pomerania founded a pirate state on the free island of Gotland and had the castle Visborgin built here. After the Kalmar Union monarchies turned against him, Eric robbed parts of the Danish and Swedish crown treasure and withdrew to Pomerania. So you can see the Baltic also was a theater of robbery and piracy. In Danzig, German merchants claimed already city rights in 1260. Decades later, Teutonic Knights subjected the Polish king and the Brandenburg Margraves, evolved in a blooming free city. Gdansk joined the Prussian Federation since 1466, and in 200 years later, Swedish occupation seized Danzig, and the Duke of Prussia parted from Poland. By the Peace of Tilsit, Prussia confirmed Danzig's free status after Napoleon's abdication in 1807. The biggest of all the fortresses on the Baltic Sea is, of course, Malbork, or in German Marienburg, the Teutonic Order's Grand Masters Hermann von Salzach's stronghold, who christianed the Prussians, the original inhabitants of Prussia. Constructed of their future main fortress started in 1250 when their residence was moved from Venice to there. Marienburg served as the order's stronghold. In 1466, the knights were expelled to Königsberg by Polish Lithuania and lost their power, and the restoration continued after 1945 by Polish bodies, but it was initiated already under Prussia's King Frederick William III and his architect Schinkel. And it's one of the most beautiful sites you can ever visit on the Baltic. A bishop's residence from 1278 until 1945, Fromborg or Frauenburg, was erected by Teutonic Knights as a cathedral, protected by a ring wall. In one turret, Nicolaus Copernicus used it as an observatory to improve navigation. The astronomer drew a correct map of Baltic coastlines, but Swedish raids and shifting trade routes led to the city's decline in the 17th century. In 1255, the Teutonic Order built the fortress of Königsberg, whose name refers to King Ottokar of Bohemia. The Teutonic Knights resided here after losing their fief Marienburg to Polish Lithuania. In order to create a reformed Duchy of Prussia under Polish sovereignty, Martin Luther advised the master Albrecht of Brandenburg to split from the order. Thereafter, Protestantism was introduced in 1525 in these Teutonic territories. Yet, like Luther, Catholic Habsburg's empire saw Prussia's first Protestant duke as an outlaw. In 1618, the elector state of Brandenburg was united with Prussia. Far from Habsburg's supremacy, King Frederick I of Prussia crowned himself in Königsberg in 1701. And on the rubbles of Königsberg, Soviet Kaliningrad Oblast was founded in 1945. That was a very short version of the history of Prussia. Since 1226, when Duke Conrad of Masovia called the Teutonic Knights against the Prussians, they submitted eastern Prussia to the Livonian order, settled German farmers, and founded numerous cities. At the mouth of River Memel, they defended their fief beyond their final defeat in 1410 at Tannenberg, and Memel became Prussian. In 1541, Dutch builders came to construct first shipyards. So you see, there was always Europeanization within all these shifts and loss and changes of power. Huguenot refugees and Salzburg Protestants were called in. From 1618, the year of the when the 30 Years' War started, Memel was part of Prussia until 1919, when the region became a mandate of the League of Nations, and they were on an autonomous part of Lithuania in 1924. And like Kaliningrad, Memel's loss of 60% of its buildings made way for nowadays Lithuanian Klaipėda. In Riga, German merchants established trade posts via Gothland and Novgorod from 1160 onwards. And it was Albert of Bremen who congregated the cathedral. Riga's body of self-government exists already since 1221. In the city, the joined Hansa, for more than 300 years, Riga led her trade with Russia. And in 1709, Tsar Peter I besieged Sweden's fortified Riga for 8 months. So no more time, I just go across. You see all these fiefs have heavily been fortified, but you can also read it as a map of the European history that has its very strong profile in this area because of the proximity of neighborhood, of ambitious powers that have shaped the territories from one to the other. And with the emergence of the Russian Empire under Peter I, the whole power play was put on another level, like a play of chess with the building of St. Petersburg that led in consequence to the creation of other fortified islands and areas like Sveaborg and also Viborg for Sweden, because it was absolutely bound to defend its coast against Russian attacks, and so on to the Baltic states and to Visby, Gotland, where you still have the longest ring wall, to Kalmar with the Kalmar Union, to Karlskrona, where the first shipbuilders were Englishmen, and you have a fantastic museum of shipbuilding, and it's part of the UNESCO World Heritage, where the whole city, as it has been created, Bornholm you might know as being Danes, Kristianstad being created by Christian IV as an ideal city on Skåne that was lost right afterwards. Uraniborg, the site of Tycho Brahe, who then shifted to Rudolf of Prague because he was in conflict with his king. And Kronborg is a very important site as well because it was the fief to collect the toll from the passage in the Øresund until 1857 when it came to international regulation, and then the big iron chests of payment to the Danish crown got rather empty because they lost the toll. And when I showed the queen around, who knew a lot about these things, She said at this point, and I was very charmed by her remark, we better do not talk about it. Yeah. And now we are in Copenhagen, where you know the fortress since you have opened your eyes in this city. And the last one that I added is the little Haumjungfrau, because I wanted to make a conclusion with her. In spite of warfare using hard power throughout centuries, Copenhagen's world-famous Meerjungfrau guards the city with feminine soft power, and every time her head gets stolen, it is replaced by hard bronze. Thank you very much.